I knew something was wrong the moment my daughter-in-law paused in the doorway, like she was inspecting merchandise, not a home built on 40 years of my life. Brianna Cole didn't hurry. She let her eyes travel along the crown, molding the fireplace mantel, the framed pictures Margaret hung with meticulous care. Then she smiled, slow, warm, rehearsed. The kind of smile someone uses before delivering a line they've practiced in the mirror. "Your house is lovely, Frank," she said softly. "My parents will take the upstairs. My sister and her kids will take the downstairs. It's your duty to take them in." Her words floated into the room like perfumed poison, too sweet to be honest. Behind her, Patricia and Lyle Hartwell stepped inside without waiting for my response. Amber followed with her 2 children, all of them walking across my hardwood floors as if the place had always belonged to them. My son Evan hovered near Brianna, eyes low, shoulders tight, looking more like a guest than a man returning to his childhood home. For a moment I heard nothing but the ticking clock above the mantel and the faint echo of my late wife's voice from years ago. Frank never let anyone take what we built. They thought I would crumble. Instead, I stood letting my chair scrape the floor, and the entire room fell silent when I said one quiet sentence they didn't expect. I wasn't the weak man they assumed. Not anymore. Brianna blinked first. That slight flicker in her confidence told me she heard the steel beneath my voice. Patricia's painted smile thinned, and even Lyle shifted his weight like the floor had tilted an inch. They looked confused, startled, maybe even insulted, none of them sure how to respond to a man they had already decided was harmless. Evan's head finally lifted, confusion in his eyes. The kind of confusion that comes from seeing your father in a light. Someone else worked hard to dim. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again when Brianna brushed her fingers along his sleeve. "We just want a smooth transition," Brianna said gently, stepping farther into the living room. "This is about supporting you, Frank. You shouldn't be alone in a house this size." "This house has been just fine," I replied. "So have I." Her smile tightened again. Amber wandered past me without asking permission, opening the hallway closet, examining the built-ins, peering through doors like a real estate agent checking inventory. One of her kids ran directly toward Margaret's china cabinet, and I stepped between them before tiny hands could reach the glass. Patricia cleared her throat. "We brought a few things to make the move easier. We assumed you'd appreciate the help." I looked back towards the front door where a stack of boxes labeled Hartwell Family sat like a silent declaration. "You assumed wrong," I said. Evan's cheeks reddened. "Dad, they're just trying to ease things." Bree thought I know exactly what Bri thought. Silence stretched thicker this time. Not a peaceful silence, an exposed one. I didn't owe them explanations. Margaret always said that the moment you start explaining your boundaries to people who want to erase them, you've already lost. And God help me, I felt her beside me now, as clearly as if she stood at my shoulder. "I'm going to make one thing clear," I said finally. "No one moves into this house because they think it's a duty I owe." Patricia opened her mouth, but Brianna placed a hand on her arm. "Maybe we should give Frank a moment," she said through clenched teeth. They retreated toward the kitchen, whispering in low tones, their quiet fury drifting behind them like smoke. Evan lingered, torn between loyalty and fear. "Dad?" he said softly. "Maybe we should talk. We will," I answered. "Soon." After he followed Brianna into the kitchen, the house fell into an uneasy hush. I stayed where I'd stood, my hands resting against the back of the chair, my heart steady in a way it hadn't been in months. Something felt different, like a thin veil had finally lifted, and I could see the shape of a threat I'd ignored too long. I walked slowly through the living room, touching the frames Margaret hung herself, remembering how she stood on tiptoe to align them perfectly. This house wasn't just walls and flooring. It held the weight of every birthday, every argument, every reconciliation, every promise Margaret and I made across decades of ordinary life. And now strangers, family by law, but not by loyalty, wanted to claim it as if I were a placeholder waiting to be removed. As I reached the hallway, a faint shift of light drew my eye toward the office door. Something was off. The door stood slightly ajar, not fully closed the way I'd left it that morning. I pushed it open and saw the subtle signs. Immediately, a pen out of line. A stack of property papers shifted a fraction to the left, dust smeared near the base of my filing cabinet. Someone had been inside. I knelt and ran my fingers along the floor, feeling a tiny ridge of scuffed wood, fresh shallow. My gaze drifted toward the old safe. Margaret insisted we keep tucked behind a short bookcase. Last week I hadn't noticed anything unusual. Now faint scratch marks lined the edge like someone had pressed metal against it. Testing, probing, a chill curled up my spine. Frank Brianna called from the kitchen. "We'd love to discuss the living arrangements when you're ready." Living arrangements? That was her polite way of saying, take over. I rose slowly, brushing dust from my hands. I didn't answer her. Instead, I closed the office door quietly and let my eyes adjust to the dim hallway. My house suddenly felt filled with watchers, people who walked my floors and touched my things, but didn't love the memories built into them. I walked toward the kitchen, listening to their hushed voices. Patricia's clipped whisper, Lyle's grumbling baritone, Brianna's calm but calculated tone. They didn't even attempt to mask their urgency now. Phase 1, Amber had called it earlier. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I would. As I stood just beyond the doorway watching them rearrange my kitchen, the truth settled in my chest with quiet certainty. This wasn't a family trying to help. This wasn't compassion or concern. This was an occupation. An orchestrated takeover disguised as kindness. And Margaret had known something like this could happen. Her last weeks were filled with small warnings. Nothing direct, nothing urgent, just hints. She used to say, "Frank, pay attention to the things that feel out of place." I didn't understand then. But now, standing in my own kitchen like an outsider, I did. Something deeper was unfolding. Something Margaret had prepared for long before I realized a battle was coming. I stepped into the kitchen at last, standing tall enough to reclaim a fraction of the space they'd taken. "This conversation you want," I said calmly. "We'll have it, but under my terms." Brianna exchanged a glance with her mother, a silent admission that I wasn't bending as easily as they expected. Patricia forced a tight smile. "Of course, Frank, whatever you need. What I needed was time. What I needed was to understand exactly what they were after." And as I turned from the kitchen doorway, my eyes drifted again to the scratched safe in my office, a cold certainty forming in my gut. Margaret had left something behind. Something meant for me. Something the Hartwells wanted before I even knew it existed. And God help them, if they went looking for it before I did. By the next morning, the house no longer sounded like mine. I woke to thuds, boxes scraping across the floor, and voices echoing down the hallway. Patricia's sharp orders, Amber's bright chatter, the shuffle of unfamiliar footsteps. The Hartwells moved through my home with the confidence of people who believed they already belonged there. For a few seconds, lying in bed, I almost convinced myself it was a dream. Then the smell of fresh coffee drifted up the stairs, coffee I hadn't brewed, and I knew it was real. When I stepped into the hallway, 2 large boxes blocked my path. Each was neatly labeled in bold black marker. Hartwell upstairs, bedroom. Another box rested beside the linen closet, Amber downstairs, suite. The neat handwriting looked permanent, as if the ink had already dried into the fibers of the cardboard. I followed the noise to the foyer and froze. Patricia stood in the middle of the living room, holding a clipboard, directing 2 movers I'd never seen before. They hauled in a dresser that didn't belong to anyone in my family and set it down with a heavy thump. Lyle, still in his jacket, walked through with a tape measure hanging from his pocket, stretching it across the archway as though he were planning renovations. Before I could speak, Brianna appeared beside them, carrying a potted plant I definitely didn't want. She looked up at me brightly, as if we were starting some grand family project. "Oh, Frank, you're up. We decided to get a little head start. Figured it'd be easier for everyone. I didn't agree to this, I said. Her smile faltered for just a second before she layered politeness back over her expression like fresh paint. We assumed it was fine after yesterday's conversation. Yesterday's conversation had meant nothing of the sort. But she glided past me toward the stairs, ignoring my answer entirely as she called to her parents, "Famdada, let's put your things upstairs. The light is beautiful in that bedroom." I watched Patricia ascend the steps without waiting for permission, without acknowledging the years Margaret spent making this house a home. Amber followed, balancing a box with one hand and texting with the other. One of her kids ran past me with a stuffed dinosaur shouting about calling dibs on the big room. "This is not your house," I said. The child blinked at me, confused, then shrugged and ran toward the guest room. Evan finally appeared at the bottom of the stairs, his face pale and his hair still uncombed. He held a bag of groceries as if he'd come to soften the blow, but realized too late he was standing in the middle of a disaster. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I told them we should wait," he murmured. "That's not what it looks like," I replied. He flinched, and guilt flickered across his face. But before he could answer, Brianna swooped in and kissed his cheek. "Sweetheart, get the bags in the kitchen. We're almost done setting up." Setting up. The phrase twisted tight in my gut. When I reached the kitchen, Patricia was clearing out Margaret's cabinet, removing plates my wife chose on our 10th anniversary, stacking our holiday dishes into a box labeled "Donation." My stomach turned. "Put those back," I said, sharper than I intended. Patricia didn't blink. "Frank, these are outdated. You'll see, it'll feel so much better once we modernize." "Change is good for a man in your situation." "My situation," I echoed. "And what's that?" She gave a condescending smile. "Alone, grieving, overwhelmed. We're trying to help you. You're replacing my life with yours." "No, Frank," she said gently, as though I were a confused child. "We're establishing structure." Amber stuck her head into the kitchen, her ponytail bouncing as she said, "Mom, once we get the pantry sorted, we'll check the basement. I need to make sure everything's safe down there for the kids." "The basement is fine," I snapped. She raised her brows. "It didn't seem fine last night. I heard something shift. Could be loose boards. Maybe mold. We'll check. You'll stay out of it," I said. Amber gave a tiny laugh, the kind that wasn't meant to be heard, but always is. "We'll see." I turned to Brianna. "Call your movers back. Everything leaves." "Dad," Evan interjected quietly, "it's temporary. They're trying to make things easier. Easier for who I asked." Evan opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence told me everything. Later that morning, while the Hartwells unpacked loudly upstairs, I stepped into the downstairs hallway, hoping for a moment of quiet. Instead, I found Amber standing inside the storage closet, rifling through boxes Margaret and I packed decades ago. Childhood mementos, old tax documents, letters from my mother. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She jumped and plastered on a surprised smile. "Oh, I thought this was empty. Just trying to see what space we have to work with. Mom says we should consolidate everything." "Close the door," I said. She did reluctantly, brushing past me without a hint of apology. But the worst was yet to come. As I walked into the den, Brianna was waiting with a stack of papers neatly arranged on a wooden clipboard. She gestured to the armchair across from her. "Frank, can we talk?" "I don't think we see eye to eye," I replied. But she waved my concern away with the same airy dismissal she'd used since the day she married my son. "This isn't a debate," she said with professional sweetness. "It's a plan." She handed me a document titled Household Agreement. The language seemed benign at first glance, shared responsibilities, mutual support, but the clauses buried beneath made my skin crawl. Section 3. Household decisions will be made by majority vote of residents. Section 5. Financial matters may be reassigned if deemed necessary for household stability. Section 7. Resident Franklin Cole will defer major logistical decisions to family consensus. You expect me to sign this? I asked. It would make things smoother, she said. You've been under a lot of stress. I'm fine. Brianna tilted her head sympathetically. Frank, this house is too much for you. We're stepping in to help before something goes wrong. Nothing has gone wrong, I said, folding the papers and setting them on the table. Except you arriving uninvited. Her expression cooled. This resistance isn't good for you. Evan entered the room, then hesitating again, torn between standing beside her or beside me. Maybe you could just look over it, he said. No, I answered. This is my home. I decide what happens here. Brianna's jaw clenched so tightly the muscle twitched. Let me be clear, Frank. We want what's best for you, but refusing support can lead to misunderstandings. She let the sentence hang in the air, soft but heavy. Are you threatening me? I asked. She smiled again, thin, controlled, just concerned. When she left the room, Evan lingered a moment. Dad, Bree's just trying to help. Is that what you believe? I asked. He swallowed hard. I don't know. By afternoon, their occupation felt complete. Patricia reorganized my pantry as if conducting an orchestra. Lyle paced the house, scribbling measurements onto a yellow notepad. Amber took calls with the door closed, discussing timelines and evaluations. Her voice laced with urgency she tried to disguise as casual. I overheard one of her conversations while passing the laundry room. Tell them phase 1 is underway, she whispered. He's resisting, but we'll get there. A cold wave rippled through my chest when a muffled voice asked on the other end. Soon Amber replied, He won't know what hit him. I stepped away before she noticed me, my pulse thrumming in my ears. Something was happening behind the scenes, something bigger than Brianna's ambition or Patricia's controlling nature. They were coordinating, planning, executing. Near dusk, I found a moment alone in my office. The door still hung slightly ajar from earlier, reminding me that someone had been inside before. I crouched beside the filing cabinet again, studying the scratch marks near the old safe. They weren't accidental. Someone had tried to open it. I pulled the safe a few inches from the wall, my hands steady despite the rising dread. Along the back edge lay a faint scuff I hadn't seen before, metal on metal. A recent attempt. Frank Evans' voice drifted down the hallway, softer than usual, uncertain. You okay? I didn't answer. Not yet. Not until I knew what I was fighting. I pushed the safe back and rose slowly, letting my gaze sweep the room. They wanted something inside this house, something Margaret protected long before I realized the danger. And now they were moving in fast, moving with purpose, moving with knowledge I didn't yet have. But Margaret always taught me pay attention. So I did. And I promised myself one thing. Whatever they were after, whatever they thought they could take, whatever phase 1 meant, I would uncover it first. Before they did, no matter what it cost me. I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the house sounded like an intrusion. Every faint shift of air felt like someone moving where they shouldn't. For decades, this home had been a place of certainty. But now the walls seemed to hold their breath with me waiting for the next violation. Near 3 a.m, when the house finally fell silent, I sat in the living room with only a single lamp burning, staring at the dark window where my own reflection looked older than I remembered. By morning, I'd resolved one thing: I needed help. Not from Evan, he was tangled too tightly in Brianna's influence to see clearly, but from someone who remembered this neighborhood before the Hartwells set foot in it. So at 9, I walked next door to see Mr. Lawson. The man answered his door in the same faded work shirt he wore while trimming rose bushes all summer. His eyes narrowed when he saw my face worry, etching deeper lines across his brow. Frank, you all right? Can we talk? I asked. He stepped aside immediately, ushering me into his tidy kitchen. The familiar scent of lemons and sawdust grounded me in a way my own house no longer could. Tell me what's going on, he said, pulling out a chair. I sat and exhaled slowly. They're trying to take my house. His expression didn't change right away. But something in his posture shifted the way a man reacts when he hears something he expected and dreaded at the same time. What did they do, he asked. Moved their things in without asking. Talked about support and responsibility. But every word is about control. Patricia's already reorganizing the kitchen. Lyle's measuring the damn walls. And Brianna, she's pushing papers toward me, agreements, authorizations, things meant to look harmless. And Evan? He asked gently. I shook my head. He's caught between wanting to help and wanting to keep the peace. But he's blind to her, Lawson. Blind. The older man leaned back in his chair. I always had a feeling about her, he murmured. That girl watches everything. Not in a normal way, calculating like she's always a step ahead of the room. I closed my eyes briefly. I found scratch marks on my safe. That made him sit up straight. In the office, yes. Someone tried to open it recently. Lawson didn't look surprised. He rubbed his jaw, thinking something through that he'd kept quiet for years. Frank, he said slowly, I think it's time you knew something Margaret told me. Her name hit me like a sudden gust of warm air. I leaned forward. What did she tell you? He hesitated, weighing his words. It was years ago, before she got sick. We were standing at the fence talking about repainting the porch. Out of nowhere, she said, if anything ever happens to me, watch the basement. That family will come for him someday. I felt my breath freeze. The basement, Lawson nodded. I didn't understand it then. I figured she meant sentimental things, old boxes. But now, Frank, it wasn't random. She said it with certainty, like she knew something was buried literally or not that someone else wanted. I sat back, the memory of the loosened mortar in the basement wall flashing through my mind. Something Margaret hid, something the Hartwells were looking for. I whispered, she knew. Lawson placed a steady hand on my arm. Tell me what you found down there. Not much, I admitted. A staircase that feels older than the house. A wall with brick that doesn't match the rest. A space behind it, I think. But I didn't open it yet. He frowned. You think Brianna knows? I think she suspects. Last night, Amber said they'd check the basement for safety. I heard her. That wasn't about safety. Lawson muttered, damn. Then he stood, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a battered notebook. I kept this from when I helped Margaret with her yard that year. She'd talk while we worked. I didn't understand half of it, but I wrote it down because it sounded important. He handed me the notebook. The first few pages were simple notes, fertilizer reminders, a list of flowers Margaret hoped to plant. But halfway through, I found a section labeled in Lawson's shaky handwriting, Basement Important. Under it, in quotes, were Margaret's words, walls tell stories. People hide things in them when they know others want to erase the past. Another line, if anything ever happens, Frank will need proof. He'll need history. And the last, never let the corridor vanish. My chest tightened. Corridor, I repeated. What corridor? Lawson shook his head. I don't know. She said it like I should. But Margaret knew things, Frank. About this land, about your house, about people who once tried to take it. I stared at the page until the ink blurred. What do I do? I asked softly. You look, he said, before they do. I hesitated. I'm not sure I want to do that alone. You're not alone, Lawson replied. I'll be right there if you need me. I gripped the notebook, feeling Margaret's presence as clearly as I had the night before. She'd left signs, left warnings, and I had ignored every one of them until now. I stood. Thank you, I said. I don't know what I'm walking into, but thank you. He nodded once. You be careful. When I returned to my house, the atmosphere felt even heavier. The Hartwells' voices carried through the walls, overlapping, irritated. They argued in hushed tones, but not quiet enough. I told you he wouldn't sign anything yet, Brianna snapped. We need access, Patricia hissed. Without it, we can't proceed. He'll cave, Amber said. We'll push the appointment earlier if we have to. Once the evaluation is on record, not. Here, Lyle growled. Lower your voice. I stepped quietly up the stairs before they noticed I'd returned. Conversations like that weren't meant for my ears. They were meant to tighten the trap around me. By mid-afternoon, the house fell strangely quiet. No footsteps, no laughter, no orders. When I stepped out of my office, I saw a moving truck outside loading the last of the Hartwells' belongings into my home. It felt like the final piece sliding into place. I needed space to think, so I took a walk down the street. The crisp air steadied me. When I reached the end of the block, I turned back and saw my house through a different lens. Its roof line sharp against the sky, its windows reflecting the last of the daylight, its structure tired but enduring. I whispered, "What did you hide, Margaret?" That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered cautiously. "Hello?" A soft voice replied, frank. "It's Marjorie Hale." I stiffened. Margaret's old friend, a lawyer who handled trusts and estate planning. "I'm sorry to call unexpectedly," she continued, "but I received an alert this morning that someone tried to request access to your late wife's trust documents through an automated system. The request was denied because it wasn't authorized. But it came from your home address." Cold dread slid through my chest. "Marjorie," I said carefully, "what exactly were they trying to access?" Margaret made several amendments to the trust before her passing, she said. "Sensitive ones. Ones she wanted disclosed only in specific circumstances." "What circumstances?" If her husband, her voice softened, ever faced coercion or attempts to remove him from his property. My grip on the phone tightened. She knew. "Yes," Marjorie said. "She knew something like this might happen. She prepared protections, and she instructed me to contact you immediately if anything seemed compromised." I closed my eyes. The weight of it pressed hard against my ribs. "Frank," she said gently, "are you safe right now?" I looked across the street toward my house, the place that held my memories, my marriage, my life. And for the first time, I wasn't sure. "Yes," I lied, for now. "Then listen carefully," she said. "If anything about your situation changes, call me. There's a file one your wife said you might someday need. Your wife was a brilliant woman, Frank. She saw storms long before others did." When the call ended, I stood still on the corner, the wind cutting through my jacket. The truth had finally taken shape. The Hartwells weren't just pushing boundaries or overstepping. They were executing a plan. And Margaret had predicted all of it. As I walked back, a new resolve settled into my bones. If they wanted what Margaret left behind, they'd have to fight harder than they ever expected. Because this time I was paying attention. When I stepped back into the house, the air felt different, thicker, almost expectant. The Hartwells sat around the dining table, though none of them looked like they were enjoying their afternoon. Papers were spread everywhere, and I recognized the stiff tone of a family meeting disguised as casual discussion. Brianna's head lifted first. She smiled as if I were interrupting something benign. "Frank, good timing. We wanted to go over some things with you." I didn't sit. "What things?" Lyle glanced at Patricia. She gave him a tiny nod, and he straightened his shoulders. "Just logistics. Practical matters, given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" I asked. He gestured vaguely around the room. "Your situation, the house, your needs." I almost laughed. "My needs," I echoed. "Is that what this is about?" Patricia folded her hands with excessive poise. "Frank, none of this has to be uncomfortable. You're no longer managing well on your own. It's natural. Happens to everyone eventually. We're stepping in before it becomes a crisis." I stared at her, then at Brianna. "Did you agree with this?" Brianna leaned forward, her expression soft, but her eyes bright with some private calculation. "We want to help you transition. We've done a lot of research on how to support someone in your position." "My position," I repeated. Which is what? There was a single beat of quiet. Then Amber said plainly, "You're aging, Frank. You're alone. It's not safe." Evan stiffened beside her, looking uncomfortable with her bluntness. "Amber." "No," she replied, waving him off. "He needs to hear it." I held her gaze for a long moment. "I've lived in this home for 40 years. Alone doesn't mean incapable." Patricia gave a pitying smile. "That's what all older men say before things deteriorate. We're trying to prevent the inevitable." "The inevitable?" I asked, anger beginning to flicker beneath my ribs. She tapped her clipboard. "You either accept our support or we'll need a more formal structure." Something cold slid through my chest. "Formal," I repeated. Brianna reached for her stack of papers. "It isn't meant to alarm you. It's just part of the Hartwell method. Organization, stability, structure. The Hartwell method," I said. "Sounds like a corporation." Lyle straightened the pages in front of him. "A family is a corporation in a way." Patricia nodded approvingly. My jaw tightened. I turned to Evan, who had been silent through most of this. "Is this what you think too?" He opened his mouth, but Brianna answered before he could speak. "He understands the importance of stepping in before decisions become unpredictable." Something inside me snapped, then not an explosion, but a precise silent break. The realization that they weren't helping. They weren't concerned. They were maneuvering. "What happened earlier today?" Brianna continued, "when you wandered off without telling anyone?" "I went for a walk," I said sharply. She smiled in that maddeningly calm way. "Right. But you forgot your phone. What if something happened to you? You see, these changes in routine are red flags." "Red flags," I repeated. Patricia chimed in, her voice softened with false sympathy. "Frank?" "Sweetie, you're grieving, you're confused." "It's understandable. I'm not confused," I said. The words came out low, steady. But they didn't believe me. Or rather, they didn't intend to believe me. Lyle leaned back and exhaled with forced patience. "Look, we've discussed it. All we need is your consent, voluntarily. Then everything moves forward smoothly. And if I don't consent?" I asked. A silence snapped into place. Amber looked at Brianna. Brianna looked at Patricia. Patricia didn't look away. Patricia finally answered. "Then we explore a competency evaluation." Evan's head whipped toward her. "Mom, hush," she said without even glancing at him. My pulse thudded once hard. What?" "A routine evaluation," Brianna soothed, as if this was no more threatening than a dental cleaning. "Just to make sure you're making safe choices. If the professionals agree you need help, we'll have legal grounds to step in. It protects you, Frank." "What it does," I said, "is take away my rights." "Only temporarily," Amber added matter-of-factly. "Until you stabilize." "Stabilize?" Like I was a malfunctioning appliance. I took a breath. "I'm not doing it." Brianna's smile didn't move. "You will, one way or another." Something in Evan's face faltered then. He looked sharply at her, not with anger yet, but with the beginning edge of doubt. I held on to that flicker. It might matter later. Before any of us could speak again, the doorbell rang. Amber groaned. "Were you expecting someone?" "No," I answered. Patricia shot Brianna a warning glance. Brianna shook her head slightly. Whatever they expected, this wasn't part of it. I walked to the foyer and opened the door. A woman in her early 50s stood on my porch, holding a tin of lemon cookies wrapped in a cheerful yellow ribbon. She wore a navy coat, her dark hair pulled back neatly, her expression warm but professional. "Mr. Cole?" she asked. "Yes." She offered a gentle smile. "Sorry to drop by unannounced. I'm Marjorie Hale. I knew your wife." I froze, not because I remembered her, but because when she said Margaret's name, she didn't soften it with pity. She said it with respect. She stepped back slightly, giving me space to decline. That told me she understood boundaries, something the Hartwells clearly didn't. It's been a while, she continued. But I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd say hello. Margaret spoke kindly of you. I hope it's not a bad time. Behind me, Brianna's voice floated from the dining room. Who is it? I did not answer her. Please, I said to Marjorie, stepping aside. Come in. She entered, and her eyes flicked briefly across the foyer boxes labeled Hartwell. She hid her reaction well, but not well enough for me to miss it. We sat in the living room. She placed the cookies on the coffee table. Margaret used to ask me for this recipe every Christmas, she said softly. She claimed yours always disappeared first. My throat tightened. She loved her sweets. She loved a lot of things, Marjorie replied. Especially you. The simplicity of that hit harder than I wanted it to. Before we could speak further, Brianna swept in, smile-fixed tone bright enough to cut glass. Hello, I'm Brianna. Frank's daughter-in-law. Marjorie extended a polite hand. Nice to meet you. What brings you by? Brianna asked, voice sharpened with suspicion behind the sweetness. I wanted to check on Frank, Marjorie answered calmly. It's been a long time since we talked. I saw the shift in Brianna's face, the quick mental calculation, the danger assessment. Well, she said we're all taking excellent care of him. I'm sure, Marjorie replied, her tone unreadable. Patricia and Lyle appeared in the doorway like summoned guards. Evan lingered behind them, his expression uneasy. Marjorie's eyes swept the room, taking in each face without flinching. Then she turned back to me. Frank, I'd love to catch up properly sometime, in private. I have something of Margaret's you may need. Brianna stiffened. Need what exactly? Marjorie ignored her. If tomorrow works, stop by my office, or I can come here. Tomorrow, I said quickly. Patricia stepped forward. We'd prefer you not overwhelm him with legal matters. Marjorie raised an eyebrow. Legal matters? Patricia froze, trapped by her own overplay. I just meant... He's grieving. Marjorie gave her a slow, unconvinced nod. When she stood to leave, I walked her to the door. Before stepping outside, she leaned in just slightly. Trust your instincts, she whispered. They're not wrong. She left without looking back. I closed the door and rested my hand against it. Behind me, Brianna's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. What does she want with you? I turned slowly. You tell me. She blanched. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Lyle's jaw flexed. Amber folded her arms. Only Evan looked at me with something almost like fear, not of me, but of what he hadn't been told. Frank, Brianna said, tone soft but trembling with pressure. Whatever she's saying, don't listen. Lawyers complicate things. Families solve things. The irony nearly knocked the breath out of me. Is that what this is? I asked. You solving things. We're protecting your future, Patricia declared. My future isn't yours to manage. Silence. No one moved. I straightened my shoulders, suddenly aware of a clarity I hadn't felt since Margaret died. I'm meeting her tomorrow. And whatever she has, whatever Margaret left, I'm ready for it. For the first time since they walked through my door, I watched fear flicker in Brianna's eyes. Not panic, not guilt. Fear. She knew something was coming. And she knew Margaret had prepared for this long before they ever stepped into my home. The next morning arrived colder than any late autumn day should have been. A thin frost clung to the grass, silvering the yard, in a way that made the whole world look paused. I dressed quietly, listening for any sign that the Hartwells were awake. The last thing I needed was Brianna intercepting me before I reached Marjorie's office. When I stepped into the hallway, the upstairs was silent. Good. I made it halfway to the stairs before a soft voice drifted behind me. Going somewhere, I turned. Amber stood in the doorway of the guest room, hair-tousled phone in hand. Even sleepy, there was something sharp in her expression, like she was instinctively assessing everything, where I'd been, where I was going, what she didn't know. Just out, I said. At this hour, she asked, glancing at the window. It's barely 7. I have an appointment. She tilted her head. With who? Not your concern, I said, then walked past her. Amber didn't stop me, but she watched me the entire way down the stairs. By the time I reached the front door, footsteps upstairs told me the house was waking. It was only a matter of time before Brianna realized I was gone. I drove to Marjorie's office with my hands tight on the steering wheel. Every mile felt like moving farther from danger and closer to something I wasn't mentally prepared for. Margaret's secrets had weight. I could feel them pressing against the inside of my chest. Marjorie's office was in a converted Victorian painted white with a navy door. Her nameplate gleamed beside it. I knocked once and stepped into a quiet reception area where soft jazz played under warm lighting. A young assistant greeted me, recognized my name instantly, and led me down a carpeted hallway. Marjorie stood when I entered her office, her expression gentle but alert. "Frank, I'm glad you came." "So am I said, surprised at how honest the words felt. She motioned to a chair across from her desk. "Please sit. There's something we need to go over." I sat feeling much older than I had yesterday. Something about her tone rooted me in the moment. She reached for a thick folder on her desk. "Before I show you what Margaret prepared, I need to ask, has anything changed at home since yesterday?" "Yes," I said. "Everything?" She nodded grimly. "Tell me." So I did. I described the Hartwell's boxes, their intrusion, their sudden ownership of space. I described the documents they pushed at me, their talk of competency, their attempts to insert themselves into my daily life. I told her about the scratches on the safe, about the basement wall, about Lawson's notebook, and Margaret's warnings. Marjorie listened without interruption, though her face tightened piece by piece. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. I suspected they might escalate quickly. Margaret feared this. What exactly did she fear, I asked? "That they would use your age and grief against you," she replied. "That they'd isolate you, pressure you, make you doubt yourself." She saw the way Brianna operated in small things. She worried that one day, those small things would reach your doorstep. I swallowed. "And she prepared for it, yes," Marjorie said, "extensively." She opened the folder. Inside were documents, legal ones, signed and notarized long before Margaret's illness. "This," she said, sliding the first paper toward me, "is an amendment to your marital trust. Margaret added it nearly 2 years before she passed." I scanned the page, recognizing some legal phrasing, but not enough to grasp the full meaning. "What does it do?" I asked. "It restricts any transfer of property or power of attorney unless you consent in writing with a witness present," she explained. "No family member, not even your son, can override it. Not without a court order based on undeniable evidence of incapacity." I felt something inside me loosen, like a knot beginning to unwind. "She did this," Marjorie continued, "because she feared people might mistake your quiet nature for weakness." "My quiet nature," I repeated. "She always knew me." "She did," Marjorie said softly. She pulled out another document. "There's more." "What's this one?" I asked. "A protective clause," she replied. "It triggers automatically once any third party attempts to force your relocation or question your competency without medical necessity. It gives me the authority to intervene." I stared at the page. "She trusted you that much?" "Yes," she said simply. "She trusted me to protect you when she couldn't." Emotion caught in my throat. I cleared it quietly. Then Marjorie withdrew something from the bottom of the folder, a sealed envelope with Margaret's handwriting across the front. My name. Just my name. Not Frank, not my love. Simply, "For when the time comes." My hands trembled slightly as I took it. "She wrote this, she did," Marjorie said. "She left several, actually. But this one was for the moment she feared most if you ever faced coercion in your own home. I didn't open it yet. I wasn't ready." Marjorie folded her hands. "Now, tell me what the Hartwells have done in the last 24 hours. Not the emotional parts. The specific actions." I told her about the movers, the bedroom takeover, the pantry reorganization, the basement comment, the paperwork, The not-so-subtle threats about evaluations. Every detail. Marjorie's professional mask dissolved into something harder, anger cold and righteous. "Frank," she said, her voice low, "they are already positioning you. They're building a false narrative, that you're confused, that you're declining. It's a textbook setup used in elder coercion cases." The words hit like a blow. She continued, "They intend to use a medical evaluation to strip you of autonomy. Once legally diminished, they could petition for guardianship. Then they control everything your finances, your property." My stomach twisted, and Margaret knew they might try that. "Yes." I looked down at the envelope in my hands. What did she write in here? Marjorie hesitated. "Only one way to know." I opened it carefully. Inside was a short letter. Margaret's handwriting, steady, elegant, familiar enough to make my heartache, filled both sides of a single sheet. I read silently. "Frank, if you are holding this, then what I feared has begun. You must trust yourself now. You are stronger than you believe. Look in the office, behind the fireplace ledger. You will find what they want and why you must protect it. Do not let them remove you from our home. Not yet. You have more power than they know." "Margaret," I lowered the letter. Behind the fireplace ledger, I whispered. Marjorie leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "There's an old ledger book Margaret kept," I said slowly. "She used it to record repairs, renovations, and anything structural. She kept it in the office bookcase. And behind it, I don't know. But a jolt of certainty ran through me. Something was there. Something important enough for Margaret to hide. Something the Hartwells suspected existed. Something the scratches on the safe and the loosened basement wall hinted toward. Marjorie spoke gently. "Once you find it, call me immediately. I'll review whatever you discover and prepare your legal defense. In the meantime, document everything they do, every comment, every change, every overstep. Write it down." "I will," I said. "And Frank, yes, don't confront them with this yet. Knowledge is your advantage. Don't give it away." I nodded slowly. When I left her office, the cold air slapped my cheeks awake. The street seemed sharper, clearer, the world more vivid. Margaret wasn't just leaving me breadcrumbs. She was walking beside me. I drove home in silence, one hand gripping the steering wheel, the other holding the letter like a lifeline. As I approached the house, I saw Brianna's silhouette through the front window. She stood perfectly still, staring out at the road as if waiting for prey to return. When I opened the door, she appeared instantly. "Where were you?" she asked too casually. "Out," I said. She stepped closer. "You should have told someone. I don't need permission to leave my own home." Her jaw tightened. "We're worried about you." "No," I said quietly. "You're worried about losing control." Her expression flickered just enough for me to see the truth beneath the paint. Behind her, Patricia hovered near the stairs. Amber peered from the kitchen. Lyle's heavy steps sounded overhead. They were waiting, planning, counting on my silence. But Margaret had left me something, and I intended to find it, tonight. The moment the house quieted for the night, I made my way to the office, with Margaret's letter still folded in my pocket. I shut the door gently, listening for footsteps in the hallway. Nothing. The Hartwells had retreated to their claimed bedrooms, and for once the house felt still enough for me to breathe. The fireplace ledger had sat on the same shelf for nearly 30 years. Margaret kept everything labeled neatly: roof 1987, electrical, chimney cleaning, fireplace ledger. I pulled it down carefully, feeling the familiar weight of the old hardcover book. The spine cracked softly in my hands. Behind it, the faintest line marked the wooden paneling, a grove half the width of a fingernail. I pressed along the edge. Nothing moved. I pressed lower. Still nothing. Then, remembering how Margaret used to press the latch on our back gate, a small downward push rather than a pull, I tried pressing the panel down instead. A soft click broke the silence. The panel loosened just enough for me to grip it with my fingertips. My heart thudded once sharp as I eased it open. Inside the narrow cavity lay a half-wrapped parcel layered in brown paper softened by time. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted it out. A smell like old cedar drifted from the hidden space. Margaret had sealed it well. I moved to the desk and unwrapped it piece by piece. Inside lay 3 objects: a folded brittle map, a metal surveying tag engraved with numbers, a small black notebook with Margaret's handwriting on the cover. The notebook simply read, "Corridor." The word hit me with the force of a physical blow. I remembered Lawson's notebook, Margaret's warnings. Her line, "Never let the corridor vanish." My throat tightened. I opened the black notebook first. The first page held a title in Margaret's steady cursive, "Property History Legal Notes." Each following page was filled with dense handwriting. Margaret described old property disputes going back generations. Owners who tried to alter land boundaries, a development company that once attempted to challenge the original deeds. She wrote about something called a corridor right, a narrow strip of land that connected multiple historical parcels. It wasn't about its physical size, it was about legal access. Whoever controlled the corridor controlled the ability to expand, divide, or repurpose the entire land block. And according to Margaret's notes, our home sat at the heart of it. The Hartwells didn't just want my house. They wanted the corridor. My head buzzed with realization. Brianna's sudden interest in the basement. The way Lyle measured the walls. Their urgency, their pressure, their impatience, they weren't simply forcing their way into my life. They needed what Margaret had hidden. I scanned more pages. Margaret suspected Brianna had ties to a development group attempting to rezone the area. She wrote, "Someone will return for this. I must protect Frank. Protect me." Even in secret, she had been shielding me. I wiped a hand across my eyes and set the notebook aside gently. Next, I opened the folded map, yellowed and fragile. The ink had faded, but remained legible. It showed property lines long before the neighborhood existed. A red mark highlighted a strip of land curving behind our house, the corridor. It connected our property to the undeveloped woods beyond the neighborhood. Margaret had drawn a bold circle around the house itself. With a note, "Key lot guard this." My pulse hammered. No wonder someone tried to get into the safe. No wonder someone messed with the basement wall. They were looking for this map. Footsteps creaked overhead. I froze. Slow, heavy steps. They paused directly above the office Brianna and Evan's room. I held my breath. After a moment, the steps moved away again. I exhaled slowly, folded the map carefully, and tucked everything back into the wrapping. Margaret had given me a second chance to protect what she fought for. I reached for my phone and texted only one word to Marjorie, "Found it." Her reply came seconds later. "Don't show anyone. Call me at 8 a.m. I put the items in a drawer and locked it. Then I placed the fireplace ledger back exactly as it had been. The gap in the panel was nearly invisible. When I stepped out into the hallway, the house felt charged, like it knew what I'd just discovered. I made it halfway to my bedroom before Brianna's voice drifted softly from the shadows. "Couldn't sleep either, Frank?" I turned. She leaned against the wall outside her room, arms crossed expression. Pleasant but sharp around the edges. Her eyes scanned my face as though she were searching for something. "Just restless," I said. Thinking about what she asked too casually. "You know," I replied, brushing past her. "Life." She followed me a few steps. "You were in your office, and it's late." I glanced over my shoulder. "Does that concern you?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Only because I care." "You care a lot," I said, almost enough to move into someone else's home without asking. A flicker of irritation crossed her eyes. "We're family. Family supports each other. Family asks permission," I said. Her tone cooled. "Frank, resisting us won't help you." "You think I need help?" I asked. She tilted her head, sympathy dripping from every syllable. "I think grief can cloud judgment." I stepped closer until she had to lift her chin to hold eye contact. And I think you're overplaying your hand, Brianna. For one split second, her expression cracked. Fear, no. Calculation. She was recalibrating. Good night, Frank, she whispered, turning toward her room. Good night, I replied, though neither of us meant it. I shut my bedroom door and leaned against it, heart pounding. For the first time, Brianna didn't look certain. She looked wary, suspicious. She sensed a shift. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I showered, dressed, and headed for the kitchen, hoping to steal a moment alone before the Hartwells descended. But Amber was already there, leaning against the counter, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up. Where are you going this early? Out, I said, grabbing my jacket. You have appointments now, she asked. No. She slid her phone into her pocket, studying me with those restless eyes. Mom said something's off with you. Said you seem unsettled. I met her stare. Do I? Yeah, she said after a beat. Like you know something we don't. I stepped closer. Then maybe you should worry. Amber swallowed, thrown off by my tone. Is that a threat? It's a promise that I'm not as easily handled as you all think. She let out a shaky laugh. Frank, come on. You're making this harder than it needs to be. You made it hard, I said, when you started digging. Her smile faltered. Digging in my closets, my office, my basement. Her face went blank, a mask stripped of all charm. You should be careful accusing people of things, she said quietly. So should you. Before she could respond, Marjorie's name lit my phone screen with a message, urgent, call me when you're alone. I walked out before Amber could say another word. Once in my car, I called Marjorie. She answered on the first ring. Frank, listen carefully, she said, voice taut. I reviewed some files this morning. If the Hartwells gain legal control, they could sell the land, restructure the deeds, and eliminate the corridor rights entirely. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. They're moving fast. They will move faster now, she warned. You found something they'll want. They may try to escalate. Escalate how? Tighter control. Pushing evaluations. Forcing a medical review. Frank, do not let them isolate you. Not even for a moment. I won't. I'm calling the courthouse today, she continued. And I want a second set of eyes on everything in your home. Someone tried to access Margaret's trust documents yesterday. That wasn't random. I stared at my house through the windshield. They know something exists, I said. They just don't know what. But they will keep digging, she said. And they will become more aggressive the closer they get. I'm ready, I told her. Good. Keep the items hidden. Keep your guard up. And Frank, yes, do not underestimate them. They've planned this for years. As I ended the call, the front door opened, and Brianna stepped onto the porch, scanning the yard with narrowed eyes. She didn't know what I found. But she knew I wasn't afraid anymore, and that terrified her. I put the car in reverse. It was time to stop reacting. It was time to fight back. When I returned home later that afternoon, the house was unnervingly quiet. Too quiet for a place filled with people who had spent the last week stomping through it as if the floors belonged to them. No voices, no movement, no clatter from Patricia reorganizing something that didn't need reorganizing. Silence. The kind of silence that warned more than it comforted. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. The faint scent of furniture polish lingered in the air. Someone had been cleaning or pretending to clean, which usually meant they'd been somewhere they shouldn't. Hello? I called out. No response. I walked through the living room listening. A faint shuffle came from down the hallway, the direction of my bedroom. My hands clenched. I moved quickly but quietly. Halfway down the hall, the sound sharpened into a metallic click, the kind a filing cabinet makes when someone tries to open a drawer that doesn't belong to them. I reached my bedroom doorway and stopped cold. Amber stood with her back to me, leaning over my dresser. My bottom drawer hung open, the one I kept locked. The one I'd unlocked only long enough to hide Margaret's map and notebook behind a stack of shirts. My pulse hammered once hard enough to make my hands shake. She didn't notice me right away. She was too busy rifling through the drawer with purpose, not curiosity. She was searching, and she expected to find something. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. Amber jolted violently, slamming the drawer shut. She spun around, eyes wide, then narrowed. "Oh, Frank, you scared me. Answer the question." She smoothed her hair with trembling fingers. "Your room was unlocked. I thought I heard something. Maybe a rat or something in the wall. Just checking." "You were checking my dresser. Rodents hide anywhere," she replied, shrugging lightly as if this absurd lie should soothe me. "Get out," I said. Amber opened her mouth, but something in my voice must have reached her. She backed away, lifting her hands in a show of innocence. "Fine. No need to overreact. I was trying to help." My chest burned with anger. "Open this door again without permission, and you'll regret it." Her smirk flickered back. "You can't threaten me, Frank. Not with everything going on. I'm not threatening you," I said steadily. "I'm promising." Her expression faltered only for a moment, but I saw fear thread through her eyes. She brushed past me, muttering, "Talk to Brianna if you have concerns." After she disappeared down the hallway, I closed the bedroom door and locked it. My breath shook as I opened the drawer. The shirts were still folded neatly. The items underneath were untouched. They hadn't found them. Not yet. But Amber's search wasn't random. Someone sent her. Someone suspected something. I placed the map and notebook deeper into the drawer, then slid my old lockbox in front of them. Better to make the drawer look full messy occupied. I wasn't taking chances. Still, a tremor of unease lingered in my bones. Someone was tightening the net, and I was running out of time. I sat on the bed and tried to steady myself. I needed a plan. I needed clarity. A loud knock rattled the front door. Not a polite knock, a forceful one. I hurried down the hallway, heart thudding. When I opened the door, Evan stood on the porch, shifting anxiously. "Dad," he said softly, "we need to talk." For a moment, relief washed through me. At least one part of this house still belonged to someone who cared. "Come in," I said. He stepped inside, glancing around as though afraid someone might overhear. His hair was disheveled, and there were purple shadows beneath his eyes. "Where's Brianna?" I asked. "Out," he said. "With her mom?" I nodded. "Good. Fewer ears. What's going on?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Dad, Bree thinks you're hiding something." "Does she?" I asked carefully. "Yes. She said you've been acting different, taking calls outside, locking your door, leaving the house without telling anyone." "It's my house," I said. "I know," he replied quickly. "I know that. But she thinks something is off. That you're—" He hesitated, searching for the right words, or the gentlest ones. "She thinks you're confused." The word cut deeper than I expected. "And you?" I asked softly. "What do you think?" Evan's gaze dropped. "I don't know what to think anymore. I'm the same man I've always been," I said quietly. "You're angrier," he whispered. "More guarded. Maybe because strangers are tearing apart my home." He winced. "They're not strangers. They're family. Family doesn't take over rooms. Family doesn't measure walls. Family doesn't push paperwork that strips a man of his rights." He shook his head. "You're misunderstanding them." "No," I said firmly. "You're misunderstanding them." He closed his eyes, as if bracing himself before speaking again. "They told me," he said, "that if something happens, if you hurt yourself or wander or get lost, they'll be blamed for not stepping in." "What the hell are they filling your head with?" I asked. He lifted both hands helplessly. "I just want to help you. I don't want anything bad to happen." A pang of guilt flickered through me, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because my son had been dragged into this manipulation so deeply he couldn't see daylight. "Evan," I said, softening my voice, "look at me." He did. "I am not confused. I am not declining. I'm not losing myself. I am being cornered. There's a difference." His jaw tightened. The conflict inside him was painful to watch: loyalty battling fear, doubt battling love. Then he whispered, "Bree said if you don't cooperate, she might have to contact someone. A doctor." I stilled completely. "Did she tell you who?" I asked. He frowned. "Some specialist. Someone who evaluates, I don't know, behavior, cognition. A competency doctor?" They weren't waiting anymore. They were accelerating. I stepped away from him, needing air, needing space. "Evan," I said, turning back to him, "do not let them take me to a doctor. I don't choose myself." He looked startled. "It's not like that. It's just an evaluation." "It's the first step," I said quietly. "Once they have that on record, they can do anything." He stared at me, horror creeping into his expression. "Are you saying they'd try to take control?" "Yes. Dad, come on. They wouldn't." A harsh laugh caught in my throat. "They already are. You just haven't seen it." He rubbed his eyes. "I don't know what to believe." "Believe me," I said. He hesitated, then whispered, "I want to." Before I could respond, the front door opened. Brianna swept inside, her smile strained, her eyes sharp as glass. "There you are," she said to Evan. "I've been calling." I turned my phone off, he muttered. Her gaze flicked to me, measuring. "And how was your afternoon, Frank? Fine?" "Did you stay home?" she asked lightly. "No." Her eyebrows rose. "Oh, where did you go out?" She waited for something more. When I didn't offer it, she moved closer, lowering her voice. "Frank, it's important we track your activity. We need consistency." "I'm not a child," I said. "You're not acting like someone who understands the situation." "Then explain it to me," I said, stepping closer. She blinked, startled. "You think I'm confused? You think I'm declining? You think I shouldn't be alone? That's the narrative you're building." Why, Brianna's lips parted, then closed. She wasn't expecting the confrontation. Behind her, Evan stared between us, pale and torn. I pressed again. "What do you gain if I'm declared incompetent?" Her eyes hardened. "It's not about gain. It's about safety." "Whose safety?" She didn't answer. For a moment, the air thickened into something dangerous. Then she smiled, a thin, unsteady thing. "Dinner's in a couple hours. We'll talk later." And she walked away. Evan followed slowly, but looked over his shoulder, once eyes filled with doubt he couldn't hide anymore. When they were gone, I leaned against the hallway wall, my pulse still racing. Amber searching my drawer, Evan warning me, Brianna probing my movements. They were tightening every screw. I needed protection. I needed evidence. I needed to secure what Margaret left behind. The first step was making sure they never found it. The second was making sure I found what was behind that basement wall before they did. And time was running out. I waited until dinner, hoping the tension in the house might settle, but instead it thickened like steam on glass. The Hartwells moved around the kitchen with an unspoken urgency. Brianna stirred a pot of soup too fast, splashing broth across the stove. Patricia chopped vegetables with short, irritated strikes of the knife. Lyle hovered by the pantry door, pretending to browse, but really listening to every word spoken. They were on edge, and I knew why. They felt me slipping from their grasp. I took a seat at the far end of the table. Evan sat across from me, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on his napkin. He hadn't said 2 words since lunch, but his silence was louder than anything in the room. When Brianna placed a bowl in front of me, her smile was polite but tight. "Acorn squash soup," she said. "Family recipe." "Your family?" I asked. Her smile didn't shift. "Ours now." We ate in a brittle stillness. Amber scrolled her phone with one hand while feeding her youngest with the other, pausing every few minutes to glance at me like she expected me to bolt. Patricia kept looking at Brianna, silently seeking approval, confirmation, direction. Halfway through the meal, Brianna folded her hands neatly. "Frank, we need to discuss tomorrow." I lowered my spoon. "What about tomorrow?" She took a breath, preparing her tone as carefully as a surgeon preparing a scalpel. "A doctor is coming in the morning." Evan's eyes snapped up. Patricia stopped cutting her chicken. Amber froze mid-scroll. I stared at Brianna. "A doctor?" "Yes," she said calmly. "Just a house visit. Simple, really. For what, a wellness exam," she said. "Routine. Routine exams require appointments," I replied. "Doctors don't just appear," Patricia interjected. "He's highly respected. Comes recommended. We're lucky he had an opening, lucky." The word made bile rise in my throat. "When did you schedule this without asking me?" I demanded. "A few days ago," Brianna said. "We were concerned about your recent behavior." "My behavior?" She nodded as though she'd just diagnosed a symptom. "You've been forgetful, withdrawn, secretive, leaving without telling anyone where you're going." "I'm allowed to go wherever I damn well please," I said. "Not if your judgment is impaired," she replied softly. Amber looked at me with pity that was more insulting than hatred. "It's for your own good, Frank." Lyle finally joined in. "Just cooperate. It'll go smoother. Go smoother for who I asked." Evan cleared his throat, shaky. "Maybe it's not as bad as it sounds. Maybe it's just a checkup." "No," I cut him off. "It's not." He looked at me, torn open by two loyalties pulling him in opposite directions. I pushed my bowl away. "I won't do it." "You don't have a choice," Brianna said quietly. My pulse thudded once painfully. "I always have a choice." Her expression didn't change, but the air shifted around her. She sat up straighter. "If you refuse the doctor documents, that documentation goes in your file. It can trigger a court-mandated evaluation." "Which is exactly what you want," I said. Silence rippled around the table. Evan stared at Brianna this time with something like fear. "Is that true?" She didn't answer him. She didn't need to. Her silence confirmed everything. Evan shoved back his chair, standing abruptly. "I need air." He walked out the back door, leaving it open behind him. The night air swept in like a whisper of truth. When he was gone, Brianna turned to me. "You're making this more difficult than it has to be." "No," I said evenly. "I'm seeing things clearly for the first time." She stood. "Tomorrow morning. 9. I expect you to be ready." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. My silence was the first victory I'd claimed in days, and I made sure she felt it. After dinner, I retreated to the living room. From the couch, I could hear the Hartwells arguing in the kitchen. "Patricia, you're losing control." Amber. "We should have pushed the evaluation earlier." Lyle. "If he finds something, Brianna, he won't. He can't. There's nothing for him to find." Her voice lowered to a dangerous whisper. "Unless he already has." Those words sent an electric chill down my spine. So they suspected something. Good. Let them fear what they didn't know. About an hour later, Evan returned through the back door. He stood in the living room, his face drawn, hands shaking. "Dad," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to apologize," I told him. "I should have stopped it. I should have said something at dinner." "You're seeing the truth now," I said. "That's what matters." He sank onto the armchair across from me. "I don't know who to believe anymore." "Believe what you see," I said gently, "not what you're told." He rubbed his eyes. "Mom thinks you're hiding something." "Your mother thought a lot of things," I said softly. "Most of them were right." He lifted his gaze. "Are you hiding something?" "Yes," I said honestly. "Something your mother left for me. Something important." "Is it dangerous?" he whispered. "For them," I said. Evan let out a breath that sounded halfway between a laugh and a sob. "Dad, why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't ready," I said. "But you're getting there." He nodded slowly. "What do we do?" "We wait," I said. "Tonight. Tomorrow I handle the doctor. Then you and I talk. Really talk." His shoulders sagged with relief, the first genuine sign of trust I'd seen in days. "Okay," he murmured. "Okay." He stood and hesitated before leaving the room. "Dad, whatever happens tomorrow, I'm here." It wasn't a promise, not yet, but it was something. When the house finally settled for the night, I slipped into the hallway with quiet, steady steps. One more task weighed on me before morning. I needed to check the basement. I moved toward the basement door, my hand brushing lightly across the wall as I walked. The air grew cooler with each step, the house shifting from warm familiarity to the borders of something hidden, something older. When I reached the basement door, I paused. The wood felt cool beneath my palm. A faint scrape came from behind it, like someone had moved something earlier. I twisted the knob. It was locked. I hadn't locked it. My breath caught. Someone else had. Someone had been down there. I looked toward the stairs, listening. Nothing. Not a footstep, not a whisper. I pulled out the small key I kept hidden in my jacket pocket, the old brass key Margaret gave me years ago, the one she jokingly called insurance. I inserted it into the lock. It turned smoothly, silently. The door opened with a soft creak. I flicked on the light, illuminating the narrow wooden stairs spiraling downward. The basement air smelled faintly of dust and something else, something disturbed. I stepped down slowly, each stair groaning under my weight. At the bottom, I stopped. A stack of boxes had been moved. Not dramatically, but just enough to show someone had examined them. The mortar line along the odd wall looked slightly different, crumbs of dust scattered beneath it. They were getting closer. Not close enough to find anything yet, but close enough to confirm what I already knew. The Hartwells weren't guessing. They were hunting. I walked to the wall and pressed along the edges again. The mortar shifted faintly, looser than yesterday. Someone else had tried. They didn't know where to push. They didn't know the trick. They didn't know Margaret's habits. But they were determined. I turned off the light and headed upstairs, shutting the door behind me. I locked it again, then pushed a chair beneath the doorknob. In the hallway, the air felt colder. The clock ticked loudly, echoing through the silence. Tomorrow would be a battle. The doctor's visit. The Hartwells watching. The pressure tightening. But tonight I finally understood something Margaret had tried to warn me long ago. They weren't just after the house. They were after history, and history, if protected correctly, could destroy them. I went to bed with one thought anchoring me. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was defending Margaret's legacy. And I would not lose. I woke long before sunrise, lying still in the dark, listening to the house breathe around me. The doctor would arrive at 9. I had less than 4 hours to prepare, not for him, but for the performance Brianna expected me to give. She needed me confused, uncertain, slow. She needed proof. I intended to give her none. I rose quietly, dressed, and went downstairs. The basement door remained locked, the chair pressed beneath the knob, exactly where I left it. Good. At least the night had passed without intrusion. By the time I reached the kitchen, Patricia was already awake, stirring something on the stove. The scent of oatmeal burnt around the edges filled the air. "You're up early," she said without looking at me. "Could say the same about you," I replied. She stiffened. "We wanted you to have a proper breakfast before the doctor arrives. It's important you're rested." "Rested enough to fail?" I asked. Her stirring slowed. "Frank, please don't make this difficult." I didn't answer. She didn't deserve one. Amber entered next, hair in a tight bun, clipboard in hand. She looked like she was preparing for a board meeting, not a wellness exam. "We have the living room set up," she said to Patricia. "Comfortable, quiet. Better lighting." Patricia nodded approvingly. "Perfect. Frank will sit on the end of the sofa. Evan will greet the doctor and make introductions. Calm, structured, supportive. Structured." The word made irritation bristle across my skin. They were staging my life like a scene in a play. A few minutes later, Brianna emerged from the hallway, fully dressed, polished, and smiling far too sweetly for someone preparing an ambush. She approached me with a cup of tea. "Drink this," she said. "It'll help you relax." I took the cup but did not drink it. "What's in it, chamomile?" she replied. "Nothing harmful." Amber snorted behind her. "He thinks we're poisoning him." I never said that, I murmured, though the thought had crossed my mind more than once. Brianna stepped closer. "Frank, I know today feels intimidating, but you'll see it's not an interrogation. It's just an evaluation to confirm you can safely live independently." The irony nearly made me laugh. Independently? I could barely open a closet without one of them appearing behind me. "You seem nervous," she added softly. "I'm not nervous," I replied. "Just awake." Her smile twitched. "Good. Stay cooperative and this will be simple." Evan finally entered the kitchen, rubbing his eyes hair damp from a rushed shower. "Morning," he muttered to no one in particular. His gaze found mine. There was something new in it today, something unsettled. Fear. At 8:30, the household settled into their positions like actors taking places before curtain call. Patricia paced. Amber rehearsed questions she thought the doctor might ask. Lyle stood by the window watching for the car, as if he were expecting royalty. At 8:58, a blue sedan pulled into the driveway. "Showtime," Amber whispered. My stomach clenched, but not from fear, from anticipation. This was a test for them as much as for me. The doctor stepped out, a tall man in his late 60s with salt and pepper hair and a neatly pressed blazer. He carried a leather bag and wore glasses that made him look scholarly, maybe even gentle. A deceptive front, perhaps, maybe not. Evan opened the door for him. "Dr. Kendall, I'm Evan. Thanks for coming." "Of course," the doctor said warmly. "Always happy to help families navigate difficult transitions." The phrase, "difficult transitions," sliced through me like a cold knife. Kendall entered the living room and looked around. The Hartwells had arranged everything for maximum sympathy. Soft lighting, photo albums on the coffee table, a throw blanket neatly folded beside my seat on the sofa. It was staged to make me look fragile, nostalgic, dependent. I took a seat without waiting to be asked. The doctor smiled at me. "Mr. Cole, it's good to meet you." "You too," I replied. He sat opposite me. "This won't take long. I just want to ask some questions, get a sense of your routine, your memory, your decision-making. Nothing invasive." "Sounds fair," I said. I felt Brianna's gaze burning into the side of my face, waiting for me to stumble. He started simply. "How long have you lived in this home?" 40 years, I said. "Bought it in '84. Margaret and I raised our son here." "And your wife?" "She passed recently." 2 years, I replied. Sympathy softened his features. "I'm sorry. Thank you." He paused, studying me carefully. "And how have you been coping on your own?" "Fine," I said. "Better before my house got crowded." I let my eyes flick toward the Hartwells, not accusatory, just pointed enough for him to notice. Amber shifted uncomfortably. Brianna's smile tightened. The doctor nodded slowly. His pen moved across a page. "Tell me about your daily routine." I described it clearly: when I woke, when I cooked, how I kept the house, my morning walks, the projects I maintained. Every detail was crisp, sharp, undeniable. Patricia frowned. Amber whispered something under her breath. Dr. Kendall continued. "Do you manage your own medications?" "I only take one," I said. "And yes, I take it nightly. Bottles labeled, easy. Any missed doses lately?" "No." He nodded. "And finances? Do you feel capable of handling bills, bank accounts, insurance paperwork?" More capable than the people currently invading my home, I said mildly. He blinked, then smiled as if suppressing a laugh. So you still manage independently? Yes. Any struggles with memory? No. Before he could speak again, Brianna stepped forward. Doctor, if I may. Frank has been extremely forgetful lately. He misplaces items, leaves doors unlocked, wanders off without telling anyone where he's going. He even accused me of poisoning him yesterday. I turned toward her. I asked what was in the tea. That's not how you said it, she insisted. Would you like me to quote myself? I asked. She flushed. The doctor held up a calming hand. Brianna, I'll address concerns in a moment. For now, I'd like to continue speaking with Mr. Cole. Her jaw tightened, but she stepped back. Dr. Kendall resumed. Mr. Cole, do you feel unsafe living here? I hesitated, and the room leaned in. Yes, I said. A gasp burst from Patricia. Brianna stiffened. Amber set her phone down. Dr. Kendall's pen froze. Unsafe how? Not physically, I said. Emotionally, personally. My privacy is not respected. My belongings have been searched. Decisions are being made without my consent. I feel pressured, watched, cornered. Silence smothered the room. The doctor studied me for a long, heavy moment. That's serious? Yes, I said. It is. He turned to the Hartwells. Have you entered his private spaces without permission? Patricia sputtered. We were tidying, Amber blurted. I was checking for rodents. The doctor raised an eyebrow. In his dresser drawer, she swallowed visibly. Evan stared at his family eyes, widening horror dawning inch by inch. Brianna stepped forward, controlling her tone with difficulty. Dr. Frank is confused. He doesn't remember the help we provide. He forgets conversations. He invents, I'm not confused, I said quietly. I'm not forgetting, and I'm not imagining. Dr. Kendall turned back to me. Would you allow me to conduct a brief cognitive test? Yes. He asked me to recall 3 words. I repeated them easily. He asked me to count backward by 7s. I did without hesitation. He asked me to draw a clock. I drew it cleanly. He asked me the date, the season, the name of the current president. I answered everything correctly. When the test ended, he closed his notebook carefully. Mr. Cole is fully competent, he said. The Hartwells went pale. Brianna whispered, That can't be right. He looked at her unimpressed. It's correct. Amber's face twisted. He's good at hiding things. He's good at being mentally sound, the doctor corrected calmly. Patricia's voice quivered. But you don't understand. We've been caring for him. No, he said firmly. You've been managing him, and quite aggressively from what I see. Brianna stepped in front of him. Doctor, if you file an incomplete assessment, we'll have to request a second opinion. That is your right, he said. But the second opinion will show the same results. Then he turned to me with a kind but serious gaze. Mr. Cole, my advice is to secure your living situation. What I see here raises red flags, not about your cognition, but about the pressure being placed on you. I nodded. I know. He packed his bag and handed me a card. Call me if you need official documentation. I accepted it. As he left, the Hartwells stood frozen, silent, stunned. The moment the door closed, Brianna spun toward Evan, her voice a quiet hiss leaking through clenched teeth. You see what he's doing? He's manipulating this entire situation. Evan didn't reply. He didn't even look at her. He looked at me. And for the first time, I saw something break loose inside him, something Brianna no longer controlled. When he walked toward me, his voice trembled. Dad, what's happening here? Tell me the truth. And I knew the next move would decide everything. Not just for me, but for him, for Margaret, for the home she protected in silence. The battle was just beginning. I didn't answer Evan right away. His voice hung in the air, fragile and trembling, as if one wrong word from me might push him back into Brianna's shadow. or force him to see a truth he wasn't prepared to face. The doctor's departure left a strange stillness behind the kind that follows a storm, but precedes another. Evan stood before me, hands balled into fists at his sides. "Dad, please, I need you to be honest with me." The Hartwells lingered at the edges of the room like wounded predators, Patricia frozen in indignation, Amber pale with frustration, Lyle staring at the floor, and Brianna silent, burning with a fury she barely contained. I stepped closer to my son. "Evan, the truth is, your mother tried to protect us long before any of this happened." His eyebrows drew together. "Protect us from what?" I glanced at the others. They were listening too closely. It wasn't safe. "Not here," I whispered to him. "Not with them." He swallowed, then nodded. Brianna's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "Evan, come with me. Now." He didn't move. That was the first real crack in her command over him, and I saw it. She saw it too. Her voice sharpened. "Evan?" He finally turned toward her. "No." The silence afterward felt electric, brittle, dangerous. Her tone dropped to something low and cold. "We need to regroup." "You mean rewrite what happened?" he snapped. "The doctor saw everything." "Dad's fine." Her expression twisted. "He fooled the doctor." "He didn't fool anyone," Evan said. "You're the one trying to force a narrative." Patricia stepped forward. "Don't speak to your wife that way." "No," Evan said louder this time. "Someone has to say it. You all pushed this evaluation on him. You tried to make him look incompetent." "Why?" Amber scoffed. "Because he is—" "No, he isn't," Evan shouted, startling all of them. "He's not confused. He's not declining. He's overwhelmed because you've taken over his life." A tremor of pride warmed my chest, but I stayed still. Brianna's face turned a shade paler as she realized Evan wasn't just questioning, he was rebelling. She softened, her voice stepping closer. "Sweetheart, you're stressed. You're tired. Let's talk privately." He stepped back. "I'm done talking privately with you." The room shifted. A line had been crossed, on both sides. And Brianna knew it. She didn't speak again, not in anger, not in charm. She simply left the room, stiff and silent, disappearing down the hallway as if retreating to gather reinforcements. The others followed her, leaving Evan and me standing alone. He ran a hand through his hair. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have seen this sooner." "You're seeing it now," I said gently. "And that matters." He sank into a chair, breathing hard. "What do we do?" "We proceed carefully," I said. "There are things you need to know, things your mother discovered. But I can't show you while they're watching." He nodded slowly, eyes clearing. "Tell me what to do." "We wait until tonight," I said. "When they're distracted? When I can show you something safely?" His gaze sharpened. "Is it dangerous?" "To them," I said. "Very." He let out a shaky laugh. "Then I'm definitely on your side." For the first time in weeks, I felt the ground beneath me steady. I wasn't alone anymore. But I didn't have long to savor it. Not 10 minutes later, Brianna re-entered the room, composed, polished, cold. She held a piece of paper in her hand, folded into thirds. She placed it on the table between us without speaking. "What's this?" I asked. "A notice," she replied. "Tomorrow morning we'll begin the guardianship petition." Evan stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. "You can't be serious." She didn't look at him. "Your father refused cooperation. His behavior is unpredictable and we cannot risk his safety any longer." Evan stared at her as though he were seeing her for the first time. "No, absolutely not. You don't have authority to stop me," she said. "He's my father. And he's my responsibility," she countered. "I'm his family too." "You're abusing him," Evan said, voice shaking with fury. Her eyes snapped toward him. "Be very careful with your accusations." But he didn't back down this time. It's not an accusation. It's the truth. The room felt like the air before lightning strikes, charged, waiting for the ground to split open. Brianna's voice softened again, but it no longer held its usual power. Evan, he needs care. You know that. No, he said. I know you want something. Her jaw tightened. This conversation is over. She left again, her steps clipped and controlled, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her. When she disappeared, Evan turned to me, panic settling into his expression. Dad, they're desperate. They're rushing now. I know, I said. What did Mom leave? What could possibly matter this much? I took a breath, weighing every word. Proof about the land, about this house. Something they need. Something they'll do almost anything to get their hands on. Evan stared at me. Proof of what? That they're not entitled to any of it, I said. And that the history they're trying to erase is exactly what protects us. Before he could ask more, footsteps thundered on the stairs. Lyle's heavy tread followed by Patricia's shrill whispering. Then the front door slammed. The house rattled in their wake. Evan grabbed his keys. I'm going to follow them. I need to know what they're planning. No, I said quickly. It's not safe. I'll keep my distance, he said. But I can't sit here doing nothing. I hesitated, but only for a moment. Keep your phone on. I will. When he left, the house felt too large, too quiet, too dangerous. I locked the office door and went to the drawer where Margaret's map and notebook were hidden. I checked everything, still secure, still safe, for now, but I could feel the walls closing in. The Hartwells were escalating. Their patience had snapped. They weren't waiting for legal processes, they were forcing them. I needed help. Real help. I grabbed my phone and sent a message to Marjorie. The petition is starting. Need you ASAP. Her reply came seconds later. I'm coming tonight. Don't be alone with them. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, then walked toward the living room. But before I reached it, a door creaked behind me, a soft, deliberate sound. I turned. Amber stood in the hallway, her expression unreadable, a hand holding something she'd clearly been carrying for a while. A file folder, thick, unlabeled. She stepped closer, eyes flickering with something I'd never seen on her face before. Fear, guilt, clarity, Frank, she whispered, voice trembling. I need to show you something. I froze. What is it? She looked over her shoulder, checking for shadows, then back at me. They're going too far. I thought this would help the family. I thought we were protecting Evan. But this... She swallowed. This isn't right. My pulse quickened. What's in the folder? Amber held it out, her fingers shaking. Everything. Emails, drafts, plans. Proof they've been working on this for months. Longer, maybe. I stared. Why give it to me? Because I didn't sign up for this, she whispered. And because you don't deserve what they're about to do. My hand closed around the folder, feeling its weight heavy, damning, dangerous. Amber stepped back, her voice barely audible. Please, don't tell them I helped. I won't, I said. Her eyes brimmed with tears. They'll destroy you if they can. Use that before they do. Then she turned and hurried upstairs, leaving me alone in the hallway with a folder full of the secrets that could tear this entire scheme apart. I carried it to my office, shut the door, and locked it. When I opened the folder and read the first page, my blood ran cold. The truth was far worse than I imagined. And the storm coming next would change everything. The moment I opened Amber's folder, the room seemed to tilt. The first page alone was enough to chill me, a printed email chain between Brianna and an executive from a development company called Ridgeway Strategic Holdings. I recognized the company name only because Margaret had written it in her notebook, circled twice, underlined, marked with a single word, dangerous. The email was dated nearly 6 months before Margaret died. Brianna had written, once the property is secured, we'll proceed with the rezoning application. The corridor rights will transfer upon guardianship approval. Guardianship approval. They had planned it long before I fell into grief, before I became vulnerable, before they could justify stepping into my life. The next page showed a draft timeline labeled Phase 1 through Phase 4. Phase 1, move in. Phase 2, evaluation. Phase 3, petition. Phase 4, transfer. Transfer. My stomach twisted. I flipped to the next document. It was a letter of intent signed by some executive with a firm handshake signature agreeing to buy my property, my home conditional on Brianna delivering full control of the land parcel and corresponding access rights. Evan's home. Margaret's home. My home. They had already begun carving it into legal pieces. Another sheet. Meeting notes must secure access to basement documentation. Possible evidence hidden. Verify cavity in west wall. The basement. The cavity. Margaret's wall. My hands shook as I read the line again. They knew. They were close. Too close. And then on the final page, a note in Brianna's handwriting. Frank cannot know about this yet. His resistance will complicate the process. I forced myself to breathe slowly until the tremor faded. I needed clarity, not fear. Whoever they were working with wanted the corridor so badly they were willing to bankroll a family coup. But Margaret had anticipated that. And she had armed me well. I heard the crunch of gravel outside, a car pulling in. I tucked the folder back together and locked it in my desk drawer. When I opened the door, I saw Evan's silhouette moving through the living room window. He came in through the front door a moment later, pale and winded. "Dad," he said breathlessly, "they're meeting with someone." My heart lurched. "Who?" I followed them to a parking lot behind Ridgeway's office building, he said. I didn't get too close, but I saw Brianna talking to a man in a navy suit. He handed her a binder. They were arguing. What about I couldn't hear everything he said? But I caught one phrase, "We need it before Friday, or the rezoning window closes." Friday. 2 days away. They're accelerating everything he said. Brianna looked furious, like they're running out of time. I stepped closer. "Did they see you?" "No," he said. "But Dad, what's going on? What do they want so badly?" I hesitated only a second before deciding he deserved the truth. "They want the land," I said. "Not just the house. The corridor attached to it. Margaret figured it out years ago." "Corridor?" he asked. "Yes, a legal pathway that connects this property to undeveloped land behind the neighborhood. Anyone who controls the corridor controls the future zoning. It's worth millions." His mouth fell open. "And Mom knew she knew," I said, "and she hid proof in the house. They've been searching for it." He stared, stunned. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I had no idea I stopped him gently. "Evan, this isn't your fault." He nodded, wiping a hand over his face. "I saw Brianna reading something today. A document about guardianship. She said she wanted to speed things up." "She intends to file tomorrow," I said. "We have to act tonight." His breath caught. "What do you need?" It was the first time he'd asked me that in years. And for the first time in years, I knew exactly how to answer. "Your mother left something behind," I said. "Something that proves everything. It's hidden in the basement. I need to get it before they do." He nodded, already moving toward the hall. "Tell me how to help." We waited until the house settled into its nightly rhythm. The Hartwells retreated to their rooms. Patricia's footsteps grew slow. Lyle shut himself into the guest suite. Brianna and Evan's door closed. Evan slipped out 20 minutes later, walking quietly down the staircase. When he reached the bottom, he gave me a subtle nod. "It's clear," he whispered. I moved to the basement door, removed the chair I'd wedged beneath the knob, and unlocked it with Margaret's brass key. The old hinges groaned softly as the door opened. We stepped inside together. The light flicked on with a faint hum. Dust floated through the beam like falling snow. I pointed toward the far wall. "Over there." Evan lifted the flashlight from his pocket and approached the mortar line. "This part looks newer," he murmured. "Different grout. different pattern. Margaret did it herself, I said, to hide whatever's inside. I pressed along the seam, feeling for the catch. It resisted at first, then yielded slightly when I pressed lower. I heard a click. Evan's eyes widened. "Dad." We pulled the panel free together. Behind it was a narrow, dark cavity supported by wooden beams. Something metallic glinted inside. A cylindrical metal case lay wedged behind the beam. Dust coated its surface, but it was intact. "This is it," I whispered. I reached in, careful not to disturb the edges. The metal case was heavier than I expected. Margaret had wrapped it in cloth to keep it dry. Evan held the flashlight steady as I carried it to the basement table. Slowly, I unwrapped the cloth. Inside were 3 things. The original corridor map in pristine condition. A notarized historical affidavit signed by a state surveyor decades ago. And a letter addressed to me in Margaret's handwriting. Evan inhaled sharply. "Holy..." "Dad, this is protected evidence," I finished, enough to destroy their plans completely. Evan touched the map reverently. "Mom saved everything. She knew they'd try." "She did," I said, my voice thickening. "She always saw further than I did." Before we could say more, a sound carried from upstairs. A sharp noise, like the slam of a door. Evan froze. "Dad, someone's awake." We killed the flashlight and listened. Footsteps. Coming down the hall. Slow, careful. Not Amber, not Lyle. Brianna. Her gait had a precision to it. Intentional. Calculated. Evan whispered, "She's coming this way." We looked at each other, and without words, we acted. I wrapped the map and affidavit back in the cloth and slid them into the metal tube. Evan grabbed the cloth scraps. I shoved the tube into my jacket beneath the arm. The cavity panel snapped back into place with a soft click. The basement light was still on. We turned it off. Darkness swallowed us. The footsteps reached the basement door. The knob jiggled once, then turned, slowly. The door creaked open, spilling a narrow blade of light down the stairs. I could see Brianna's outline against the glow. Her posture rigid, her breath slow and controlled. "Frank," she called softly. "Are you down there?" Evan tensed beside me. We didn't answer. She took one step down, then another. My hand rested against the wall, steadying myself. Not from fear, but from resolve. She descended halfway, then stopped abruptly, as if sensing the wrongness of the air. The shadows, the silence. Finally she whispered, "I know you're hiding something." I felt Evan shift beside me, barely breathing. She waited another long moment, then exhaled. "We'll get it," she murmured. "Whatever it is, we'll get it all." A shiver crept along my spine, not because of her words, but because of her certainty. She turned and climbed back up. The door clicked shut. Evan let out a shaky breath. "Dad, she knows?" "She suspects," I corrected. "But she didn't find anything." "Not tonight," he said. "But tomorrow. Tomorrow would be war." We climbed the stairs in silence. Before I locked the basement door again, I looked back into the dark. Margaret had built a fortress of secrets beneath my feet. Now it was my turn to defend them. When we reached the living room, Evan whispered, "What do we do next?" I placed the metal tube gently on the table between us. "We take this to Marjorie in the morning," I said. "Before they have a chance to stop us?" Evan nodded slowly. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Dad, whatever happens tomorrow, you're not alone." For the first time since Margaret died, I believed it. But neither of us knew that by morning everything would explode in a way none of us could have predicted. I woke before dawn, the weight of the metal tube pressed against my chest where I'd hidden it beneath my pillow. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like purpose threading through my veins. Margaret had left me the truth. Evan had finally seen through Brianna's glass castle. And Marjorie was coming. Still, a storm was waiting outside my bedroom door. I dressed quietly and made my way downstairs. The house was silent, but not peaceful, more like the heavy stillness before a predator pounces. When I stepped into the kitchen, a shadow moved near the stove. I froze. It was Brianna. She stood with her back to me, hands braced on the counter, shoulders trembling. Steam rose from a kettle beside her, but she didn't pour it. She didn't move. She just breathed slow and ragged, like someone holding herself together with the thinnest thread. Then she spoke. "You think you've won, don't you?" I said nothing. She turned, her expression a mask of eerie calm. "Whatever you're hiding, it won't matter. Evan is still my husband. This house is still within my control. And by the end of today, I will have legal authority to make every decision you're too stubborn to admit you can't handle." "You failed yesterday," I said softly. "The doctor saw through you." Her smile chilled me. "Doctors can be discredited. Evaluations can be challenged. But the truth can't," I replied. For a flicker she faltered, but only for a moment. Then her jaw clenched. "Where is it, Frank? What did you take from the basement?" I didn't blink. "You won't find anything." Her eyes darkened. "I will." Evan appeared in the doorway, then hair-tousled chest rising with quick breaths. "Mom, stop." She turned to him. "Evan, you need to come with me. We're filing the petition now." "No," he said firmly. "We're not." Her controlled veneer began to crack. "Evan, sweetheart, he's manipulating you." "No," he said, stepping between us. "You've been manipulating me." Patricia and Lyle entered next, drawn by raised voices. Amber lingered behind them, eyes wide with the same fear she'd shown last night. I placed the metal tube on the table. The room stilled. "This," I said, "is what Margaret hid. The thing you've been trying to find." Brianna's face drained of color. "Frank, don't do this." Evan looked at the tube, then at me. "Show me." I unwrapped the cloth and slid out the map and affidavit. Evan leaned in, reading his expression shifting from confusion to shock to outrage. "This proves everything," he whispered. "The corridor rights, the ownership chain, the zoning restrictions. Data, this makes their entire plan impossible." "Yes," I said. "And it proves your mother documented the land long before Brianna had her hands in it." Brianna lunged forward, but Evan stepped in front of her. "Don't," he warned. She froze. Her eyes darted between me, the map, and her husband. I saw her calculating, searching for one last opening, one last lie. But she found none. A sudden knock hammered the front door. Everyone jumped. Amber's voice trembled. "Who is that?" I smiled for the first time that morning. "Reinforcements." Evan opened the door. Marjorie stood there, flanked by a uniformed officer and a woman in a charcoal gray suit holding a thick folder. Her expression was sharp, purposeful, and unafraid. "Good morning, Frank," she said, stepping inside. "I believe we have business." The Hartwells shrank back instinctively. The woman in the gray suit introduced herself. "I'm attorney Rachel Porter, representing Mr. Cole. I'm also carrying a cease and desist order regarding any attempt to file a fraudulent guardianship petition." Brianna's face twisted. "Fraudulent?" "We're trying to help him." "No," Rachel said calmly. "You're attempting to gain control over assets you have no legal claim to," Patricia sputtered. "This is harassment. We're family." "You're in violation of at least 4 statutes regarding elder coercion," Rachel replied. "And likely more." The officer stepped forward. "We have a formal complaint filed. I'm here to enforce boundaries until the investigation is complete." Brianna looked at Evan, desperation rising. "Say something. Tell them we're helping him." Evan shook his head slowly. "Mom, you lied to me. You lied for months. You used me." "You don't understand," she whispered. "No," he said. "I finally do." Her face crumpled. Rachel opened the tube and examined the documents. "These are original, and they match the notary records your wife filed with the state 22 years ago, Mr. Cole. This is airtight." Brianna made a strangled sound. "You can't trust his dead wife's secrets over living family." Rachel raised an eyebrow. Watch me. Marjorie placed a hand on my shoulder, her voice soft but steady. Margaret prepared all this for you. She wanted you safe. I know, I said. I'm finally listening. The officer cleared his throat. Given these documents and the active complaint, I'm issuing a temporary removal order. Mrs. Hartwell, your family is required to vacate this property for 72 hours. Patricia gasped. This is outrageous. Amber began to cry softly. Lyle stood frozen. But Brianna, she shattered in silence. You're throwing away your family, she whispered to Evan. No, he replied. I'm saving the only part of my family I have left. Something broke behind her eyes. Slowly, mechanically, she nodded. Fine. But this isn't over. It is, Evan said quietly. For me. The Hartwells packed in chaos. No insults this time, no threats. Only the hollow sound of defeat echoing down the hallway. As they carried the last of their things outside, Brianna paused at the front door. She didn't look at Evan. She didn't look at me. She looked at the house, Margaret's house, with a grief that had teeth. Then she left. And just like that, the storm broke. Silence filled the rooms again, but not the heavy silence of fear. A lighter one, a healing one. Evan stood beside me, watching their car disappear down the street. Dad, I'm sorry for everything. I placed a hand on his back. You came home. That's what matters. He nodded, shoulders trembling. Marjorie approached us. You'll need to file a permanent protection order, she said. And I'll help you secure the land rights so no one can challenge them again. Thank you, I said. I promised Margaret, she replied with a gentle smile. She knew this day would come. When they left, the house felt different. Wider, brighter. Like Margaret had opened a window somewhere and let the air back in. Evan helped me put the documents into a fireproof safe. What now, he asked. Now, I said. We rebuild. Over the next week, the house exhaled old tension like smoke clearing from a long-burning fire. Evan stayed close, helping me repair the parts of myself I didn't know had broken. And one quiet morning, as we stood in the reclaimed sunlight of the kitchen, he said, Dad, maybe we could start fixing the garden again. Mom would like that. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself imagine a future not built around defense, but around growth. I nodded. Yes, she would. Even now, when I sit on the porch with a cup of coffee and watch the sunrise brush gold against the trees, I feel Margaret beside me. Her quiet strength, her steady wisdom, her fierce love. She saved me long before I knew I needed saving. And I plan to honor that every day forward. If you've stayed with me through this story, I'd love to hear what part resonated with you most. Have you ever faced someone who tried to take what mattered most from you? Have you seen how quiet love can protect you in ways you never expected? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories of justice, family secrets, and the power of standing your ground, be sure to like, subscribe, and stay with this channel. There are many more stories yet to tell.